Anthony with the pump fake and one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach. And we are a Giannis Antetokounmpo podcast that occasionally talk fantasy basketball. Natty, it has been a minute. How you doing, buddy?
Howdy and what's up, Pete? How's it going? Is it cold where you are?
Oh, it's fucking freezing where I am. I think we got like a high of 17 today.
Ooh, that is cold.
Yeah, it's a little ball freezer.
Yeah, winter is upon us, and that means basketball.
Ooh, Natty Wallach with the transition coming. This is what you've been doing for our 2 weeks hiatus. You've just been perfecting your transitions from topic to topic.
It took 2 weeks just for that one thing. I feel like I should stop right now. I just saluted and I should walk off. Yeah, it's all down here.
That's fair. That's fair. It's, you know what? It's impressive that you know yourself that well to recognize when you are at your high so that you can fully embrace it and, be comfortable in it and see it for all of its glory, but then recognize that, okay, it's downhill from here and I'm going to mentally prepare myself for that.
The toughest scouting is self-scouting. And, that's funny because I sort of feel like the Celtics are in the same boat as me. It's just downhill, buddy.
Oh, you're so witty, Natty. You've not only improved your transitions, but also your wit and humor during our hiatus.
Well, we got to get ready for this shit talking season, because it's going to be so weird and everyone's. I'm
so excited. Oh my God, we are ramping it up quickly before we jump into our whole spiel for this week. If you do fantasy basketball, if you do play, make sure to go check us out, faketeams.com. We have a bunch of written content that will be coming out. I already have my top 100 players out there. I know, Natty, you have a mock draft out there to kind of calm fantasy managers who might be in a bad position in their draft about just how even if it's the absolute worst draft you could possibly have, how you can still get good players and build a good team. So make sure if you're listening that you do check out Fake Teams. We're going to have so much content coming to you throughout the NBA season as it begins in a week, which is just insane. But we are going to, this is kind of Natty's corner, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things. A lot of people, obviously sleepers is a big thing in fantasy, any sport, right? You want to get players who are going to outperform their ADP, who maybe other people in your fantasy leagues are sleeping on. And one of the things that you, Natty, have pointed to, and I'm giving you full credit, no one else in the entire world has ever thought of this. But you love to target bad NBA teams or teams that we just like, that people perceive as bad and just have a stink about them as where you get your sleepers from, because not only are you going to be getting players who, you're not already looking for players who maybe don't have quite the name recognition that are as broadly, but you're also getting them from a team that someone in your league might just be like, do I really want someone from the Knicks on my team or from the Cavs on my team? Like, no one wants that. And yet there are some fantasy guys out there who are certainly worth rostering and getting onto your squad during your draft. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about a handful of sleepers from bad NBA teams that you can be targeting and should be targeting in your fantasy drafts. You want to start us off, Natty?
Sure. Let's start with my team.
I mean, why not?
Let's go Pistons. Yeah. So the operating principle for this is exactly like you said. People don't know or don't care about most of the players on bad teams. Like Julius Randle is the perfect dude. A guy that gets you stats. No one cares about the Knicks right now, except for Knicks fans. And there are a lot of them, but it's like, if you're in Seattle, what the fuck do you care about what Julius Randle did? Unless he's on your team. He's 26 years old, and he was number 76 on ESPN's basic player rater last year. That's just a dude that gets you solid stats, but it's not sexy, and you probably don't watch him.
Totally.
But the guy that I want to talk about is, I think, the guy with perhaps the highest upside in terms of like the middle round, or you know, like from 50 to 125. How about that?
Sure.
Someone who can get you real value if everything goes well. 2 years ago, Blake Griffin, a Detroit Piston, averaged 24.5 points per game, 7.5 boards per game, 5.4 assists per game. He averaged 7 3-point attempts per game and shot them at a clip of 36%, and he shot 46% from the floor overall. Only 4 players did that last year. So these were Blake's numbers from 2 years ago. The 4 players who averaged that last year were Giannis, Luka, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James. And Blake had a better 3-point percentage than all of those 4 dudes 2 years ago. Blake's currently going like 96th, I think, in drafts, 94th. He's a guy that could be a top 10 player if he's totally healthy, and if he's playing like he did 2 years ago, then he could be one of the best players in fantasy. And the Pistons are maybe trash. We don't know. They could be mediocre. Like, it might not be a dumpster fire, depending. But it's Blake's team. Andre Drummond isn't even there anymore. Like, there are rookies, there's Derrick Rose, and there's Blake Griffin. It's Blake Griffin's team. He's only 31 years old, by the way. I feel like we sort of talk about him like he's 34.
Right. He does feel a lot older than what he actually is.
And he's been injured. I mean, he missed his rookie season. A lot of those injuries, though, have sort of been, you know, freaky. Like, he broke his hand once because he got into a fight. And so a lot of those, like, you can't say that he keeps getting those injuries over and over again. But the accumulation of all of them and the way that he plays sort of lends yourself to thinking that he is a risk. But 2 years ago, he played 75 games. Mm-hmm. So if he's really healthy, and he hasn't played basketball in a long time, then I feel like he could be one of the best players in fantasy, and maybe the dude that helps a lot of people win their leagues.
Yeah. And the thing about him that you ran through his stats back in the 2018-19 season. And it's the fact that he has the potential to be a stat sheet stuffer, that he's going to get you. Obviously, I mean, he can easily average 25 points. He's going to, I mean, when they brought him in, Point Blake was born. He did, 5.5 assists basically when he was 2018-19 season. Even the 2017-18 season, when he was brought in during the trade, that mid-season, he averaged almost 6.5 assists during that period of time. So, like, his assists could fluctuate between 5 and 6. And the thing is, he had 7.5 assists in 2018-19. He had, rebounds, 4.7 rebounds, 19-20 before he got injured. But without Andre Drummond there, I mean, Andre Drummond was getting, the man absorbs rebounds.
Vacuums.
Exactly. So that's gone. And I mean, Blake could be now seeing an extra 2 to 3 rebounds a game, which means he could be flirting with a double-double any given night. It might even average it. And the 3-point shooting, his defense is fine. He's going to probably get you about a stock a game, which isn't the worst. I think he is a player who, like, if I solidified my starting lineup in a draft, I would 100% be like, yes, Blake Griffin, I'm taking him, because what you said is totally true, where there is a lot of risk, injuries, people just kind of being like, the Pistons suck, so what can Blake really do? But we have seen really good players. I mean, think of Russell Westbrook's MVP season with the Thunder once Durant left, and it's just like not a lot of pieces around him. The guy still put up stats, at a godly number, and so Blake can certainly do that. So I like it. I mean, he'll be someone who I certainly look to draft if I'm doing redraft leagues, or I am in a dynasty league, and I might try to see if I could buy him maybe a little bit low in dynasty.
And even if he's like 18-4-4, if he actually has a 3-point shot that's better than average,
Totally.
it's there's just so much upside with him. And because he's not even 70% owned in ESPN leagues. Like, you can get him fairly cheap and be extremely satisfied. Also, I mean, who knows? He might be playing small ball 5. Like, who knows what kind of eligibility in terms of position he'll have
true too.
through the rest of the season. Could he pick up point guard?
Wouldn't that be saucy?
Right. It's the Pistons sort of don't have anything to lose. Like, Dwayne Casey is the coach of a team with youngins and a couple of vets. And, like, now that there are 10 teams that could possibly make the playoffs in each conference, the Pistons have a shot, but they could also be the worst team in the league. However, if Blake is healthy and is playing, he will get you counting stats for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, I want to talk about a guy on another team that people just love to ignore, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we have spent plenty of time on this podcast mocking the Cavaliers and their team building strategy. But I do want to talk about one of their young guards. Colin Sexton is a guy who I feel like perfectly epitomizes this. I ignore him because he's on the Cavs. But looking at his numbers last year, he played 65 games, 20.8 points, 3.1 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal a game, shot 38% from 3 on roughly 4 attempts, 47% from the field. Those aren't bad numbers. And now they get even better when you look at his last 5 games before the bubble. He was averaging 30 points a game, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game, while shooting an efficient 58.4 from the field and 37 from 3. So obviously he's not going to get you 30 a game from here on out, but that he might work his way into the low 20s, even mid 20s from a scoring output. And then the assists, maybe that upticks 1 or 2, especially with, Andre Drummond there, and you're getting a pick and roll game. Like, I just think that Sexton is one of those guys where you look at the Cavaliers roster construction and you're just like, oh, this makes no sense. Like, from an actual basketball perspective, this is terrible. I don't know what the Cavs are doing. But fantasy-wise, the man can put solid numbers up, and that's what you can only care about in fantasy hoops. So I like him as someone who could be a solid point guard for you in fantasy without really having to pay for him, because people are just going to be like, Colin Sexton for the Cavs. Do I really want to do that? Most people will probably shy away.
Last year, he ended up 52nd on the player rater in basic. That was better than Fred VanVleet and Jamal Murray. Now, Jamal Murray had a change in the bubble.
Jamal Murray found the Mike special juice and hit it hard.
Yeah, he and Don Mitch will be different this year, but also the bubble was different and everything's changed. So maybe we should temper our expectations for those two guys a little bit. However, for Colin Sexton, so like I said, like a top 60 dude last year, he averaged at least 16 shots per game last year, and he had a 47% field goal percentage. Only 12 players did that. Giannis, Kyrie, Westbrook, Kawhi, Devin Booker, the Big Cat Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, LeBron, De'Aaron Fox, Tobias Harris, Nikola Vucevic, and Sexton. Sexton is the youngest of those dozen. He is going to be on a better team this year, presumably. It would be hard to be worse.
One would hope.
Like they actually drafted a 3. Isaac Okuro's there, and I think he's probably a pretty good pickup as well. If Kevin Love is healthy, that will be interesting, and it's another guy that can pass. Hopefully Darius Garland is better than he was last year, even. They have a short backcourt, but Sexton is a real player. He could be a top 30 player this year. Like, if he takes a step up, then who knows what his numbers will end up being. He's already in pretty good company. I like him a lot. He is less than 80% owned, and he's getting picked 89th right now on draft boards. That's value. That's a guy that you can take at the back end of 100 that could end up in the top 40. That's exactly what you're trying to do in drafts. And you know that he'll get minutes. Like, he's young,
Yep.
They're not going to spell him or rest him, really. The odds of them making the playoffs aren't great, so it's not like they would try to make a trade and lessen his role.
He's also someone where it's just like he is a part, for all intents and purposes, part of Cleveland's future. Like the Cavs aren't moving anywhere.
You could argue it's his team.
Right, exactly. The Cavs aren't moving anywhere if he doesn't, like, they are waiting for him to do stuff, him and Garland. So, like, he is going to be a vital part of that team unless for whatever reason he gets moved, but he's a vital part of that team, and he's going to be the one who's kind of initiating the offense. And if you can get that at a massive discount because of the stigma of Cleveland and just because of the fact that, he was fine early in the season. Like, I definitely remember large parts of the season where you were like, Colin Sexton kind of not playing up to what you want him to be. But that how he ended last year and where he's currently ranked in terms of ADP, he's going to be a guy who I will have a hard time not snagging as, like, I mean, if he's your backup point guard, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we should expect young players to improve. And even though we haven't seen him in a while, maybe that just means he'll be that much better. So he could be some real value. And Garland, his backcourt, excuse me, he was 175 last year on the player rater. I sort of feel like Garland's floor this year is 150. It would be hard for him. Like, they're just going to play him so much that he's going to get you stats. But they're both still young. And this is a team that we really don't know what the hell to expect. We think they'll be pretty mediocre. On the other hand, shit, man, Kevin Love is good. If he is totally healthy, then, he's one of the best 30 players in the NBA, that maybe they'll be more competitive than we think. And maybe that will help the young players.
Yep. What else you got?
Okay, let's see here. Oh, you know what? Let's talk about DeJounte Murray.
Let's do it.
The Spurs, that most boring of teams, but always, in it. DeJounte Murray is one of their young guards. They've been turning over the team for several years now. DeChosen's still there. LaMarcus Aldridge is still there. Aldridge keeps sort of evaporating, like his numbers are steadily going down. But DeChosen, he averaged 22, 5, and 5 last year. Only 17 players averaged
DeMar
5
DeRozan
boards and 5 dimes.
DeMar DeRozan was like
20 plus.
Was like the epitome of what we are talking about. Right?
Yeah.
Like, DeMar DeRozan was a phenomenal fantasy guy last year, but he didn't do anything flashy. He didn't shoot. He didn't have like nights where he just was like draining it from threes. It's the Spurs, which is the most boring team to watch. And so
he doesn't take threes. I mean,
he doesn't even take them. And so he's like he is the captain of this notion where it's like, wow. Because I was just looking over my dynasty team and I have DeMar DeRozan. I was like, good Lord, he was like the third best player on my team last year, and yet I don't feel at all like he was had to put together a phenomenal. I just was just like, oh yeah, DeMar DeRozan had a good year, I guess. Anyways, continue talking about DeJounte Murray.
Because when we talk about the Spurs, it's usually in the context of Greg Popovich rather than the individual players. It's the Spurs team. Now that they don't really have a superstar in Kawhi, it's Spurs culture. And they've been drafting these young guards and trying to turn the roster over while they have DeRozan and Aldridge. DeJounte Murray is 24 years old. Last year, he averaged 10 plus points per game, 5 plus boards per game, and 4 plus assists per game. He was only one of 25 players that did that, and he was the lowest minutes per game of that group. He'll be around 30 minutes this year, I'm sure, Like, his numbers are just going to go up. He basically fills the stat sheet. He's not scoring 20 points per game, but, you know, why not 15, 6, and 5 if it keeps going like this and he improves? The Spurs team is better this year, I think. You know, they're young guys. Derek White, their other young guard, he's getting better. Devin Vassell, their draft pick, I love that for them. And there's, you know, no real reason to think that the Spurs will be bad because they're never bad. They just underwhelmed and underperformed last year to expectations because we think of the Spurs so highly. But DeJounte Murray, that's a guy who's coming up young. He is going to have a larger role with the Spurs this year. Like I said, he didn't even play 27 minutes per game last year. Like, this is a guy who's going to get minutes and more shots, and who knows how good he could be. Like, if his 3-point shot is better this year, then watch out.
And he's one of the best pickpockets in the NBA. I mean, he averaged 1.7 steals per game, which was what, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth in the league last year. And so anyone who listens to the show knows how much we appreciate the value of stocks. And spoiler alert, I'll be talking about someone who's specifically going to give you that later. But that's another just like beautiful facet of his game and something that will continue to increase with more minutes.
There's no reason, like there's no person breathing down his neck, you know? Like this is the lead guard for this Spurs team. And he has players he knows he can depend on. Like, you know what DeMar is going to do. You know what LMA is going to do. Jacob Hurtle's still there. You know, it's just such a competently run team, and they have help on the perimeter now. There's nothing but upside with this guy. Like, he's definitely one of my favorite young players just because I believe in Spurs development. And this guy's long, you know, tons of potential, plays hard. And if he's good enough for Greg Popovich, then I think he should be good enough for the rest of us.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right, going to cut in here before we move on to do a quick ad break. All right, back to whatever we were talking about. All right, talking about stocks. I want to talk about the man who is all about the stocks. And this is just, he has a special place in my heart because way back when he first got drafted, and I did a 2K league or a 2K franchise, I drafted him, or I traded for him, and he just developed into basically what I've always wanted the Celtics to have, which is just a hyper athletic rim protector, basically before Robert Williams was on the Celtics. And that is Nerlens Noel, who is in New York with the Knicks. But this is, again, like I said, stocks is the name of the game here. I love finding players late in drafts who you can get for pretty cheap. If like you might not even need to draft them. Currently, Noel is going. Let me think. He is the 138th player off the board in terms of Fantasy Pros average ADP position. So that is, that's way down there. And the guy gets you boards and he gets you stocks. Last year, averaged 2.5 stocks per game, and he had total of 5 rebounds on 18 minutes for OKC. Now with the Knicks, we've seen 2 games with the Knicks in preseason. You gotta love some Tom Thibodeau, because Tom Thibodeau is just pumping the minutes to New Orleans, and Mitch Robinson can sit on the bench. Nerlens is you might not agree with it, but it's great for Nerlens' value. 22 minutes per game through two games against so far in the preseason. And in that time, averaging 9 boards. And again, like clockwork, 2.5 stocks per game. So I love him as someone who you can get late in drafts as that just a piece to reliably get you boards, reliably get you defense, and maybe occasionally he'll have a couple points here and there, but he is someone who I like a lot for that specific purpose. If that's a hole you need to fill on your team. And he was, player 77 on ESPN's player rater last year. So even that specific role still gets you viable top 100 fantasy production.
Yeah, I laughed when I saw that Tibbs was doing this, because Nerlens does sort of feel like a Tibbs center, like he's not Joakim Noah, but He's a high energy, long dude who loves to play defense, and that's what his strength is. So it does sort of feel like a good match. From a team, like from an assets point of view, I sort of feel like the Knicks should be starting Mitchell Robinson, because if you
100% you should be starting
Like-
your young stud center who's averaging 3 blocks a game or whatever. The guy, I mean, he's great.
This is the preseason, like who knows what the deal is. Like maybe he's, I don't know, sore or something. Like we can't put too much faith into preseason stuff, but it is really interesting, and everyone took notice of that because Mitch Rob is such a popular player, and Knicks fans love him. So, I mean, my next guy is Nick as well, because this team does have opportunity, which is what you're looking for on bad teams.
Yep.
And they are sort of dedicated to a couple of the players, and then I thought Mitch Rob was one of them. Maybe not, though. But on the other hand, if they're both going to play 24 minutes, then like Mitch Rob might just foul out at 20 minutes no matter what. So we have to see. We have to see how it goes. But you could tell. I mean, as soon as Tibbs and Noel got together, it was like, a defense veteran.
This is happening,
right? Yeah, totally. Yeah. But he's also going to coach him up. He knows how to use centers, so maybe this will be good for both of them. I hesitate to tell people to draft Mitch Rob as high as if they were certain that he's a starter, but it's also like you don't want to let him drop too low. So it's just sort of really confusing now. You might just have to go with which player you like more, because they both could be starting in a couple of months, just not on the same team.
I would honestly still say I would still break in favor of Mitchell Robinson, just because he gives you more offense to go along with boards and stocks. But again, that's how I would break. But Mitch Rob is he's obviously getting that advantage already in terms of his ADP. Like he's not coming cheap for you if you're looking at. Let me quickly bring up what his Robinson.
Yeah, like I certainly wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, he's going top 50 right now.
Yeah, so it's like...
oh my God, he's going above Gordon Hayward and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps and Kelly and Christian Wood. Oh my God, I'd have all those guys.
Well, Kristaps, who knows when he's going to play.
Kristaps, that's true. The injury plays into there. But
right, but obviously Porzingis is a better player.
Also, quick side note, you did on your mock draft, I'm glad that we're on the same page that like Gordon Hayward low key should be drafted. Like Gordon Hayward could actually be, I think he's going to be extremely good in Charlotte. I feel like people are just like are forgetting what Gordon Hayward was in Utah when the whole offense was on him and he wasn't dealing from any weird kind of cursed injuries. And then just the Celtics team just passed him too quickly because he got injured and because Tatum and Brown and Marcus and all those guys just, they ascended so rapidly, especially Tatum. Yoked Tatum is coming for that MVP, by the way. That is happening. That man
should be. That's he's his now trajectory is for sure.
He's now 6'10", still 19 years old. Guy's fucking incredible. I mean, I don't know how he is able to stay 19 for 10 years in a row. But anyways, Gordon Hayward is a goddamn steal going at the back end of 50. Like, yes, please. I think he has the potential to really flirt with like old Utah Gordo.
Yeah, like 25-5. Yeah. I watched Charlotte versus Toronto. I got made fun of by my friends for watching that game. I don't care. The game was a lot of fun, and I will say this: Hayward, like it was like 14-5, whatever his stat line was. It was effortless. Like he hardly even seemed like he was trying. There's a lot of dudes on Charlotte, like there's a lot of guys there, and they all are sort of young, and they all sort of like passing the ball, and like it seemed like they were just having a great time playing with each other. Their uniforms were just a crisp. It looked so good against Toronto's red. And it was great seeing Toronto.
Yeah.
Fred VanVleet made this ridiculous 3 at the end of the half, like falling back and almost. It was just such a fun game.
You can
so
trust
excited.
us on this show to like veer off course within a matter of 20 minutes into what.
Dude, sky high miles, like
incredible.
PJ Washington didn't score well, but he played really good defense.
I'm
Terry
here for
Rozier. That was a fun game. I'm so excited about Charlotte.
Natty getting hyped about the preseason, Hornets. Baby.
I know. We shouldn't read into it. Go back 5 minutes. But I was so impressed with Hayward. I mean, it just sort of looked like he had been playing with them for a long time already.
He's fucking good at basketball, everyone. He's really good. And the Celtics, like, he was, what were his numbers? This is what I love bringing up, is what Gordon averaged last year on still playing 30 minutes a game, 33 minutes a game, 17, 7, and 4.
That's pretty good.
Pretty shooting 38% from 3. That 50% from the floor. That is very good. Now, the biggest difference is he didn't get to the line, but I think he's going to do plenty of that against Charlotte. Anyways, talk to me about who you said you had also had a Nick that was that might have a little fantasy relevance.
So when discussing bad teams, you want to know what their plans are. Who have they drafted? Who did they try to get in free agency who's young? Who do they want to give minutes and shot attempts to? The Knicks, while they do have a bunch of players, they're really only super focused on 2 of them. One of them is RJ Barrett, and the other one is their new draft pick, Obi Toppin. Obi's in sort of a crowded front court, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, we're heading towards positionless basketball more and more, especially depending on matchups. So who knows? But RJ Barrett is their guard / perimeter player of the future. Like, that's their guy. There's no fucking way he's going to get crowded out by anybody. He is going to get his minutes and he is going to get his shots. He's only 50% owned. Like I said, sophomore. His efficiency was last year. It was not good. But then think about like what the context of the team was.
The team was like, butt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's Julius Randle and there's him. And you still have a coach in Tibbs who knows how to coach guards. Like, he knows how to improve guard play. We've seen it over and over and over again. So RJ Barrett is going to be a better player under Tom Thibodeau. I think that will show up in every facet. I think he's a young player who was drafted highly, and they usually improve. This could be a sophomore slump or something, but like, there's every reason to think that this team is going to do everything in their power to help him succeed. And if there are other players on the team that aren't on the same page, then they might not be long for this world in Knicks colors. So RJ Barrett is strangely, even though he's only 50% owned, and, he's not going to be a top 25 player or anything, but he is certain. He was a sure thing. You absolutely know that he is going to get his minutes and shots.
Yeah.
And, there aren't really that many players in the league you can say that about, like 50, but that's not really that much when you're talking about drafts. This is a guy you can get later.
Right, exactly. You're getting a guy.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're getting a guy going 122 currently, at least where I'm looking at. Like, you're getting a guy who's going well out of the top 100, and he might be in that company of 50 other guys who are going to get their minutes, their shots, no matter what. And again, let's turn and look at some preseason basketball, shall we, Natty?
Sure.
Because why the fuck not? RJ Barrett leading the Knicks in minutes, 32 minutes per game over 2 games, 16 shot attempts from the field leading the Knicks, 20 points per game leading the Knicks. Like, everything is lining up for RJ to just be like, get your shit, get your shots. You are going to score us a buttload of points. Rebounds and assists are not his game. And 3-point shooting, also hasn't quite been his game yet.
I mean, his shooting overall, like he was dreadful in efficiency. But let me say two things. Let me just underline again that this is a Tom Thibodeau team. He will be playing a lot because that's
RJ
what
Barrett's
Tom
about to average
Thibodeau
45 minutes a game.
Yeah, exactly. The efficiency is probably going to be mediocre again. Like, it's not like he's suddenly going to turn into a sharpshooter. I have to assume that his free throw percentage will go up. And so when you're thinking about a player like this, you can sort of think about it in terms of like Drummond. Like, his free throw, you had to punt your free throw percentage if you drafted him because it was so bad. But even if you make small improvements from year to year, that increases their value so much. So getting a dude that gets opportunities and shots sort of at the low end of his efficiency value means that the sky's the limit. Like, he's not going to shoot worse, I don't think, like
you'd hope so, but I think you're right.
So I sort of feel like he is certain to do better.
Yeah. And he has such a huge role to step into that if he does, like, when he does play better in a massive role, that equals fantasy production.
And ownership. I mean, like, if he does well this year, he'll be 100% owned next year, just because every Knicks fan will take him in the second round.
Before we move on from the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson's nickname, according to Basketball Reference, Block Ness Monster.
Not bad.
Not bad. Natty, that's fucking incredible. That's such a good nickname. Oh my God, the Block Ness Monster? What's better, Block Ness Monster or Stifle Tower?
I like Stifle Tower more.
Get out of here. Get out of here. That's such a lie.
I mean, neither of them are better than Time Lord because that's such a funny snark name. I mean, that's amazing.
Nothing is better than Time Lord. Time Lord reigns supreme. God, I'm so glad he's starting tonight for the Celtics. And I'm so glad. God, this is my dream lineup, Natty. Have you ever heard my dream lineup before in my life? Because here it comes. It's Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Grant Williams, Time Lord. Yes!
Yeah. It's maybe going to have to be a lineup heavily used this. It's like, where'd your depth go?
No, it went down the pooper. That being said, still pretty stoked. Still low-key super stoked about Tristan Thompson and oh god damn it, who am I blanking on? Point guard Jeff Teague.
Yeah, Teague is like the most capable professional dude you've ever met in your whole life. Like, he's just one of those
replacement for Brad
guards.
Wanamaker. He's a perfect, like, just a.
I mean, I'd rather have Wanamaker, but for sure, it's the dip isn't.
Right.
He's there to help stabilize things.
Exactly. They weren't gonna pay Brad. Brad, go out and kill it in Golden State.
Yeah, and that team, I mean, they're sort of the team that's closest to positionless basketball with that lineup because Smart can guard some centers. And
some centers can guard every center.
Sure, he pushed around Embiid. Like,
Marcus versus Embiid is the best thing in the world.
Depending on Kemba's status, like, I think that we're going to see so many different lineups this year because it's such a strange season and everything that's going on that I really wouldn't be surprised to see the Williams playing
together.
A lot. Yeah, because, like, what else are you going to do, really?
I totally agree with you. I would love for Time Lord to get a real role because he during the bubble and during the playoffs when he was such a good spark off the bench. And I think I love that man. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Dude, and so many of these guys haven't played basketball in a long time and they're young. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of running this year. And I think it's going to be a focus on the athleticism of the young guys, and then all the old dudes get to rest some more.
Yeah.
So if you have your eye on like a 24-year-old player who's maybe a little undervalued, you should probably pick them up because if they stay healthy, they're probably going to get a lot of run.
I 100% agree with the words that are coming out of your mouth. Well done.
Thank you, sir. Ditto. Good job. Do you have any other players you want to mention before we
I
go?
do. I have one guy that I want to talk about, and I'm quickly debating whether or not which guy I want to go with. Really, I feel like we have to touch on the Kings briefly. And
Sure.
I do think I was going to talk about Tyrese Halliburton, which I think I still will ultimately. He's a rookie. He's a stat sheet stuffer who's going to give you points, rebounds, assists, stocks. And the nice thing I like about it is he's playing alongside De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, which is great for his fantasy value because teams are going to be worried about those two guys. Plus, if the Kings do decide to trade Buddy Hield, that's going to open up a lot of work for Halliburton. So I think he is a guy that you can be getting. I also kind of like Harrison Barnes, low key.
Sure, solid player going 159 right now, completely just forgotten about and ignored on this kind of young Sacramento like spicy Kings. Little preseason talk. Leading the Kings in minutes through the preseason, leading them in points second in points. Excuse me, Buddy Hield is leading them in points, but second in points through the preseason. So, is he the oldest player in the?
He has to be
rotation, yeah.
Which is he's 28, which is still not that old. I mean, it just shows you how young the Kings are.
And that's his second team after Golden State, right? I mean, he's a solid player.
He was Dallas. He was in Dallas for a hot sec.
Yeah, and then he's gotten his money. I mean,
oh yeah,
he's boring capable, just like Tobias Harris, just like Danilo Gallinari. There are these wings that are they're not B pluses, but they're Bs, and so everybody sort of forgets about them because they're in their later 20s and they play for a team like the Kings, and no one's really excited about them, but their ceiling isn't that high, but their floor is very, very high. Harrison Barnes is a totally safe player to get.
I mean, he's going right before Bol, Jordan Clarkson, and Taco Fall. I mean, I love Taco Fall, but is Taco Fall getting enough minutes to be a reliable fantasy player? God, no.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes is real life better than those guys.
Yes,
sometimes you shouldn't outthink it. You should be like, oh wait, well, he's a starting 3 for a team. Okay, he's probably better than this backup center.
Right, for the backup center. I mean, I would love there's no way Taco Fall is averaging more than 10 minutes this year, if even. I don't even think he's hitting double digits. Maybe he does. I would love him to, but yeah, that's absurd to me. You have anyone else you want to touch on? Because then I have a really probing question about your Detroit Pistons and how they've incurred the wrath of the Ball family.
Oh, that's funny. I did want to mention just a few other things about the Pistons because they are bad. Jeremy Grant, one of my fantasy boyfriends and who I loved on Denver.
I mean, it can't be a long 2 podcasts without mentioning Jeremy Grant.
Absolutely. He was 130 on the player rater last year. I think with the volume, he's going to be top 100 this year. I mean, he better be. But his efficiency might go down. So he is a player that I think you can safely draft as a top 100 player. He's not going to fall flat on his face.
Yeah.
Killian Hayes, their first round draft pick, number 7 overall. He's their starting point guard. This is Dwayne Casey is going to bring up another young point guard. He will get volume. You can sort of trust that. The Pistons are very excited about it. Mason Plumlee, totally boring, but maybe a stealthy double-double guy. He can get 10 and 11, right? He can just sort of fall into 12 points and 9 rebounds, depending on how much he plays. I think that's an incredibly unsexy fantasy pick, but it might be a really good, cheap source of boards. And then I just want to mention Sadiq Bey and Sviatoslav Mikhailiuk, 2 perimeter players for the Pistons. Everybody needs shooting. These are the 2 guys that the Pistons are going to want to be shooting. Sviatoslav could turn into their sharpshooter. If you're looking for a dude to take a flyer on, you should do that for him. He doesn't have that much competition at the 2. And if he's just draining threes like some of these other perimeter players on teams like Tyler Hero, then that's exactly why we got him and why we were able to ship Luke Kennard out for not much of a return. And then Sadiq Bey.
When
I'm
you
just
can
in
do
love
that,
with.
you have to do it. When you can trade a good
Whatever.
player for nothing in return, 10 out of 10 make that move.
But being optimistic, I think Sadiq Bey and Devin Vassell, like those were two of the best wing prospects. They should be NBA ready coming in. So Detroit's going to have a lot of players that are going to get a lot of run. Sekou Doumbouya is still there. So it'll be a fun fantasy year for them to see who does what.
And you're not at all worried about the LeVar Ball curse for Detroit signing LaAngelo and then cutting LaAngelo.
Like,
it's real, Natty.
It doesn't really seem like there's that. I mean, if every other team in the league had tried to sign him before us, then I think he would have been with one of the other teams. I sort of strangely think that this was like done out of respect to the Ball family. Like, yeah, of course we'll take a look. You know, like we're not just going to let him dangle out there and no one takes a shot. And then, you know, predictably he was waived. You know, like there's a Manning brother that hasn't won a Super Bowl. You know, like not everybody in the family gets to be good. And I mean, who knows? LiAngelo is maybe a better shot than LaMelo, even though LaMelo drained some threes last night.
It just seems like to me that you are tempting fate, and a team that really can't be tempting fate, Natty, to be honest.
I disagree. No, we should tempt fate because what do we have to lose? Like, what's going to happen? I mean, everyone
Michigan
says we can't
into the Lake, just doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, like people are storming the Capitol and they have to hide to the electors or whatever.
Detroit, Michigan might not exist in a little bit.
But the Pistons should play with fire. They should summon the lightning. Like they should run around in the storm because what the fuck else are you doing? You know, like if you're patiently building, then yeah, that's fine. On the other hand, be a chaos agent. Like if you can get something really, really good for Blake midseason, then obviously you do that.
Yeah.
I still kind of can't believe that the Cavs took Drum, but
yeah, that made no sense.
You know, like there's a reason to believe that it'll just be the young guys on this team next year. So, you know, like maybe the master plan is going well, but the Pistons, like, who cares if we take on curses? Like, what if LiAngelo had been good and we were like, oh shit, wait a second. You know, so like I'm glad that they took a chance. That's what they should be doing.
You should just take the chance and not cut him. He should just sit there at the end of the bench so that you don't have to deal with LeVar
Ball. I think that's sort of maybe like the problem. I mean, if he can't even make the Pistons,
honestly,
then...
I think that's a smart thing to do, Natty. I think you are defending a cursed franchise now, so have fun with that.
Well, it's not my team that keeps losing really good players for nothing, Pete. Yeah.
Moving on. Speaking of a good team that's not going to lose their player for nothing, quickly before we go, Giannis got the bag. So
nice segue, by the way. Good job. Look at that book ending.
You started it off good. I had to finish it.
Close that book.
Yeah. So Giannis, way to sign the max. Let's see. What were the final stats for his big old fat contract?
228.
Yeah.
You can opt out after the fourth year.
Yeah, 228, 5-year max deal. So there you go.
And he's 26. I mean, he'll get another one in 4 years. I mean, if he can opt out, he will opt out just to sign another one. But this is the best news that Milwaukee has had since they drafted him.
Milwaukee should celebrate this like they just won the championship.
Yeah. Like I mean, you have to imagine that Wisconsin loves Giannis just as hard as they love Aaron Rodgers. And they sort of feel like they're, you know, like Giannis is traveling up just like Rodgers did. And, you know, just like with Green Bay, like you have to be able to provide him with good enough players around him. So it's very exciting that they get to keep him. And now the hard work really begins. Like, let's build this fucking team. Let's forget about the mistakes of the past.
Yep.
Like, this is the team now.
Yep.
We can make changes through the season. We have Giannis. Let's go. Like, great for the Bucks. It's awesome. Fear the deer for sure.
Great for the Bucks. I am excited. I mean, I am excited as an NBA fan to watch this team. I love me some Drew Holiday. I'm really excited to see that pairing. As a Celtics fan, well, it's okay because Jason Tatum is yoked and is coming to destroy Giannis.
Yeah, and I think like I'm not locking the Bucks in for the number 1 seed in the East.
Yeah.
Like I think it's sort of up for grabs.
I think it's entirely up for grabs. All right. Well, there you go. Make sure you subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That's how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy baseball and fantasy football show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the Long Two Podcast. And also, we've kind of been batting this idea around. If you're interested in playing some fantasy basketball this year with us, let us know. Tweet at us. Maybe we'll start a league, and you can test your NBA knowledge against Natty, and I can just draft Celtics players.
Right, boyfriends only.
Exactly.
You have to only choose your faves. Inez Cantor, come on home.
Let's do this. Have a good week, Natty. Stay safe.
Yeah, you do the same, man. See ya.